apa namanya be interactive as much as possible. So to officially kickstart the event, I would like to I'd like to invite Mr. Lutfi Juharta, the head of startup. Where's Mr. Lutfi? Representing Zendit to share some welcoming remarks. So Lutfi, please, the floor is yours.
Is the slide ready? Can you show the slide?
By the way, there's coffee at the back, and there's some water here if you're wondering if there's any water you can have. And the toilets di belakang. All right, at the back. Yes.
Really sorry for the delay. Hello everyone, I'm Lutfi. I'm a head of startup that handles Southeast Asia for Sendit, and I would like to welcome you to our space. And I would like to introduce you about Sendit as well a little bit. Next slide, please. So yeah, as you might know, so Sendit itself is a payment infrastructure platform uniquely built for Southeast Asia. And we are also backed by prominent venture capitals all across the globe, Y Combinator, Golden Gate, Excel, and all that. And we have more than 800 culturally diverse team all across the globe as well. And this is basically one of the biggest customers of ours. We have GrabPay, Traveloka, Lazada, and all that. Next. So this is us in a nutshell. So for now, we already have a 25 billion payment volume all across Southeast Asia in 2023, with more than 320 million transaction proceed all across Southeast Asia as well in 2023. Next. This is basically our journey. So we're basically the first Indonesian company that goes to Y Combinator back in 2015. In 2016, we pivot our product into payment gateway. 2017, we find our product market fit. 2018, we grow 10 times within just 5 months. 2020, we successfully penetrated Philippine market. 2021, we become the first B2B unicorn in Indonesia. 2022, we received Series D funding, which is 300 million US dollar. 2023, we expand into Malaysia, and as of now, we're also live in Thailand and also Vietnam. Next. This is basically why our customers choose us. First one is simple integration, speed, and service. Next. This is the startup and also enterprises that already use us. Next. So yeah, this is something that I also want to tell you. So as of now, like I mentioned, right, we are already live in Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and also Malaysia. And we also have all of the payment channels in all of those countries as well. So let's say if you want to penetrate Malaysia, if you want to penetrate Thailand or Vietnam, I think it's gonna be way easier if you already use Sendit in the first place. Next. So enough about Sendit product. We really care about the startup ecosystem all across Southeast Asia because most of our customers are actually a startup, right? So if the startup is actually thriving, it means there's gonna be more volume to us as well. So we've been doing event all across Southeast Asia. So we started out online because it was during the pandemic. We have a virtual investor roundtable, which is basically connecting venture capitals to the startup through online speed dating. But of course, after the pandemic ended, we're making it into offline activity. Next, please. So yeah, as I mentioned before, this is the offline speed dating. So we've been running this all across Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and soon to be Singapore next month. But the biggest one was still in Indonesia because I think we still have the biggest market here. In Indonesia, we invited 70 venture capital, 55 of them are based in Jakarta, but 15 of them are actually flying in all across the globe to Jakarta for the event. So yeah, we were very grateful for that. So if you're currently fundraising, please consider to join the event next year because we're doing this event yearly. Next. So this is the last slide. We have Indonesia Venture Capital Database collaborating with the government. So basically, I interview 112 venture capital personally. So I'm pretty sure like the database is like quite updated. You can see. So there's like 112 venture capital, local, regional, international. As long as they're interested in Indonesian startup ecosystem, we will put them here based on their consent. Obviously, you can see their short description, type of venture capital, industry preference, funding stage, ticket size, portfolio, and of course email as well. So, if you're also fundraising, I think it might be a good idea for you to download this database. And I'm planning to update it this year and make it into Southeast Asia version. So yeah, that's about it. And please enjoy the event. And I'm gonna give back the mic to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lutfi, for those welcoming remarks. Now I'd like to take a moment to introduce our incredible lineup of speakers. So the first one is we have honored to have with us today is first one. Joining online is Philip Budon from CEO and co-founder of Waverly. Second one, Vincent Cornel Limanto, the head of growth industry from AWS. Third, Brata Rafli, head of startup ecosystem from AWS. Fourth, Dr. Yopan, government account lead from AWS. And last but not least, Sujay Roy, a principal scientist from AWS. So let's give them a warm round of applause. So let's dive into our first presentations. Hi, Philip. Can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. So please welcome Philip Budon, CEO and co-founder from Waverly. He has a background of software engineering and PhD in computer science with 30 plus years of experience. So he has been the forefront of AI development, previously leading teams at Element AI and Google. But despite the distance, he will give us inspiring insights and energy to resonate as powerfully as he can. So his session is going to be moderated by Reza. So Reza, please join us on stage. Thank you very much. So Philip, please, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Okay, let me share my screen. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna try to go into slideshow mode. Can you all see this? Sounds good, perfect, thank you. So yeah, today we're going to talk about prompt engineering. Yeah, just like the approach we're taking at Waverly to use prompt engineering in order to build what we're building. And so as the introduction said, my background is in computer science. I've been an entrepreneur for many years, but prior to that, I did my PhD in computer graphics, AI, that kind of stuff. So I kind of like a principled approach to the stuff that I do, and this is what we're doing with prompt engineering. So first, a few words about Waverly. Waverly is a B2B platform that helps businesses personalize their experiences by using AI, generative AI, in order to help them do that. The premise is simple. Your users, especially high-value users, are discerning. They seek really good experiences, and when their needs aren't met, they look elsewhere. So what we do is we build plug-and-play AI-native experiences that are customizable using natural language. And that's the twist behind Waverly that explains all this work we're doing in prompt engineering, and the reason what we're doing now is only possible thanks to generative AI. So a couple of things that we've built. We have an AI recommender system, so it can take a bunch of content, a large content catalog. It can be content from the web, it can be content from your website, and based on simple prompts, it generates a daily feed of content that is tailored to specific users. We do that also to help users write posts. When a user writes a post on any platform, well, you know, there's a vibe, there's a tone that the platform owner wants them to keep. And using Waverly technology, you can express what that tone is, and your users are getting live feedback as they write their text based on what they do. And the last thing we did is an AI interviewer system where you can actually go and chat with an AI when you want some inspiration for a text. And then we build this experience where you can mix and match stuff together in order to write something that feels really like your own. Our goal is not for the AI voice to replace you, but it's to help you think through your ideas and help use the AI to help you articulate them. But enough about what we do. Let's talk about the thing that we are here to talk about. The problem with generative AI, modern generative AI, your prompts will break. So before I dive too deep, there's something I want to say on that slide, right? It's that prompt engineering, when you're talking to all my colleagues who are building AI system, AI startups, they tend to build model-based startup, meaning that, you know, a very complex new AI that you train on a new data set. What's important is the data set, it's the training, it's the new model. It's been, you know, how I co-founded a company called Element AI, and this is what we were mostly doing there. We're not like that. And we actually, I personally think that there will be a lot of startup in the future that will be AI startup, but that will be built on top of LLMs, on top of things like ChatGPT or Llama. So when I talk like that to VC in Canada, I'm from Canada, in Montreal now, I tend to get, you know, like they don't all agree with this. Some of them think that if you don't have your own model, you're not doing real AI. You're just a ChatGPT wrapper. I happen to think differently. Despite my background in AI, I believe that ChatGPT or LLMs in general are the new software layer, and that a lot of value will be built on top of them. If we can go beyond chatbot, if we can build real new experiences on top of this layer. And so this is what we are doing here. We're writing prompts to do that. But when you start to do this, the first thing you notice is that your prompts will break. So we built solutions. We developed a bunch of solutions to help us go around that problem. You can think of RAG as one of these solutions, retrieval augmented generation, chain of thought reasoning like LangChain. There are agentic workflows that have been proposed. You can fine-tune existing model. You can try to use programmable guardrail system that exists out there in order to give more guardrails to your chatbot. There are a bunch of these solutions. So what did we do? We came up with our own solution, something slightly different. This is a classic comic in software engineering. You look at how many solutions there are, you say, hey, there are too many, we need one to rule them all. So that's what we did. We built our own principled approach to prompt engineering. But we started from that question. Instead of starting with a solution, we started with a question: why do prompts break? So here's a little example that I think illustrates a little bit what's going on with prompt engineering or with LLM in general. So this is a little chat I had today with ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT a pretty simple question. I said, hey, come up with a very long word and give me the number of times the letter I appears in that word. And it counted it and it gave the right answer. But then I asked for another letter, the letter H. And for the letter H, the answer was wrong. And then I started chatting with ChatGPT, and sometimes it gave good answers, sometimes it didn't. But it was a bit random. It wasn't systematic. So this all stemmed from a question that's been doing the rounds on the internet. Maybe you've heard of it. How many R's are there in strawberry? Any human looks at strawberry and can say there are 3 R's in there, but LLMs often get that question wrong. So one of the problems is that a single prompt is trying to do too much. You can do quite a bit with a prompt, and sometimes the right solution is not a prompt. Like in the case of counting the number of letters, the right solution is just a good old regular algorithm, a function, right? But when you're trying to do something with a prompt, sometimes a prompt is trying to do too much. It's hard to know exactly when, but we know it happens. And we run into that problem because we're trying to use prompts more and more and more to do more and more complex stuff. So we know there's a limit. We don't quite know where it is, but we know there's a limit. And when we reach it, we don't know what to do. We just keep building larger and larger prompts. So it doesn't work. So what should we do? We should do what programmers have done since the dawn of time. When some things become too complex, you break it apart in smaller, more manageable parts. And you test these parts, these components individually. You define them pretty well, but separately, and you test them separately. So let's try to do that with prompts. This was the beginning of our journey. Our solution, therefore, is to treat a prompt just like any other regular function. So you just think of it as a function that you would use in your code normally, but it's a prompt. So what's the difference between a prompt and a function? Well, a typical function is just like a piece of code that will take some structured input and have some structured output. When I say structured input here, I mean something like a string of text or a number or a data structure. It will manipulate it and output another data structure, another string, something like that. But it's very structured. We know what's in there. That's the typical function. A prompt-driven function is slightly different. It takes the structured input, but it can also take natural language. This natural language can come from a chat, but it can come from elsewhere. And in the case of Waverly products, you will see we take that natural language in a bunch of interesting places. And then you compute it using a mix of regular function and prompt-driven LLM-based systems, and you get at the output, you get either natural language or structured output or both. So maybe you get a number or a string or something structured, or maybe you get a sentence in natural language. So this is how we treat every prompt at Waverly. But it's not enough to say, hey, cool, let's treat them like prompt-driven function. We need to give ourselves the tools to manipulate and play with these functions. So because the entire point of considering them as function is to be able to break them apart in a logical fashion when they become too big and too complex. How can we do that? Well, the simple way to do it is to give ourselves the same kind of control structures that we have in regular programming. So we need the same control structures in the world of prompt functions that we have in regular programming. So this is my programmer slide. You can just to give you an idea of the kind of control structure that we have when we code regular functions. We have things like switch case, if then else, for while, stuff like that. Like the goal at Waverly, what we developed is a number of prompts that act like these things. We have a routing prompter that acts like a switch or an if then else. We have a looping prompter that acts like a for while. we have a mapping fronter that acts like a map in regular programming. So we gave ourselves the tools that allow us to treat these prompts as functions in more complex systems. This is just an example of what it allows us to do. At Waverly, one of the examples I gave you at the beginning is our recommender system. Recommender system takes a large catalog of content and takes a description by a user or a group or a customer of what they would like their feed to look like, and then it combines this with the catalog in order to give a daily feed. We can do that with classic RAG, but when we tried to do that, there was too much we wanted the system to do, and it broke apart. So instead, we started using our control structure in order to break the prompt apart so that we have a prompt to do parameter extraction, a prompt to do topic selection, a prompt to do more regular RAG stuff. Then we reassemble all of that together using another prompt. So we're really working with prompts as functions here. And when any one of these prompts become too big, we do what any good programmer would do. We break it apart into simpler components. So this is the kind of code that we write on a daily basis. Again, I'm going to skip very quickly over that, but it's just like this is kind of the language or the tools we gave ourselves so that we could write these prompts as functions that refer to each other and that call each other, that can have structured input and structured output. All of that is part of the language we built for ourselves. And then we gave ourselves the means to test these things. If they are functions, we should test them the way we test regular functions, which is with a practice that programmers called unit testing. We take these functions, we define what they should do, and then we define test cases around that, and we make sure that they work. The twist is that with prompt-based programming, sometimes the output is natural language. And when the output is natural language, you cannot do the typical kind of testing you would do on a regular function. You have to use other tools. So it's called probabilistic testing, and we implement a form of probabilistic testing in our day-to-day use. But what's important here is we think of it as a programming tool. The programmer writes the prompt, the programmer writes the test, and the programmer monitors the test and makes sure that it runs and there's no regression going forward. And this has enabled us, like all that code, the prompt and all of that is committed into our code base. And this allows us to move very fast, very quickly, and to empower programmers to make decisions at the prompt level. This is what it looks like when it runs. This is all of that are internal tools that we developed so we can build the kind of thing that we're doing. And this is an example of the probabilistic test, when you need to inspect a unit test or a prompt test because some of the output is in natural language. So in summary, just summarize what we learned in that talk. First of all, we learned that prompts are there to stay, that a ChatGPT wrapper, in my humble opinion, is really high as long as you do something principled, something solid and structured with it. But if you do that, you will end up with more and more prompts that will grow bigger and bigger, and they will break. Our solution, when they do, is to treat them like a function and to give ourselves the control structures needed so that we can keep breaking these functions apart, making them simpler and simpler, and test them like we would test any other unit. So that's all I had for you. I hope, like I had a bunch of questions prior to this talk. This talk doesn't answer everything, but I'm looking forward to your questions now. And if you're interested in learning what we do or implementing the kind of personalized experiences we develop, you can contact me, phil@mywaverly.com. Thank you.
So hi, Philip. Can you hear us well?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Yeah. So thank you very much for the presentation. It's very enlightening, and I think the topic is very much relevant to our participants here at AIIP. So we talked before, we've curated a list of questions from our participants. So this is a time where I'm going to ask you those questions, and we'll try to answer that before we give it to the audience later. So the first question is, I imagine in an AI native production environment, there will be many components that rely on a single, if not few, large language models. If the core LLM changes in the system, which is likely to happen as these models are getting more and more commoditized, how can we make sure the overall system performance will improve? Are there specific metrics or testing approaches that you use?
Yeah, that's sorry. That's a really good question. I mean, this is a problem that anybody using prompts face today. There are more and more evaluation frameworks becoming available online that will allow you to do some testing on your prompts, so that when your system evolves, either because you change the backend, you use a new large language model, or programs or software or products evolve all the time. How do you make sure you don't introduce regressions? These eval frameworks are designed for that. Most of these eval frameworks consider prompts to live in a world separate from the code itself. We consider prompts to be part of the code base. And as a result, we use the unit test practices in order to ensure there is no regression going forward. So they are different from regular unit tests. This is something that programmers have to learn, and they're not very comfortable with to begin with, because they are probabilistic. Like, you cannot basically say, hey, if the test is wrong once, the entire thing is crap. So you need to keep running them. So that's one of the issue. The other thing is, if your test set stays very stable, if you don't increase your test set over time, so the data that you're using to run these unit tests, or even the unit tests themselves, if you don't change them often enough, there is a risk of overfitting. So there's something you can think about, like in AI, overfitting means that the problem looks really good, but in practice it won't work. It will only work with your examples. It will not work in the real world. So that's something you have to take into consideration. But what I would say in our case, we have enough of these tests that it seems to work over time. But testing is the key.
All right, sounds good. The second question, on staging and production environment, how do we manage prompt versioning and testing in production environment to ensure consistent output quality?
That's again a great question. These evaluation frameworks often come with versioning systems. But as I was saying earlier, when you consider prompts as code, you basically inherit all the versioning tools that you have with your code, meaning that we're using GitHub for versioning the code itself. In our case, we're using something called Node.js that comes with NPM, which is a version manager for all your external dependencies, which you can use. When you use external APIs, it's a bit trickier. You cannot version necessarily ChatGPT. If you're using ChatGPT, you cannot make sure that you're always using the same version. But for AI, it's not such a big deal. Because they're already probabilistic system, you have to build some robustness into your software to begin with. So even if these things change over time, in practice, what we've noticed is that it doesn't change our output too much. But it's still a world that changes faster than most of the rest of the software ecosystem. So some features are available in ChatGPT today might not be available in the next generation or the next version, or vice versa, or they're available in one LLM and not the others. So it's a bit trickier, but because it moves fast, not because it's fundamentally different from what we were doing before.
Okay. Thank you for that. And third question, so how does a system should respond if a prompt invokes a certain function with undefined parameters? How can we design the function primitives to minimize differences of what normal user would expect and what the system is capable of?
That's a beautiful question. And that's actually, like, I did not touch on that in the talk, but it's one relatively fundamental problem. is that when you have regular functions in your code, you can pretty much make sure that they're robust for every case that they will be faced with. You know, you define its domain of applicability and you make sure that it works there. Not so for prompt-based function. You never know when an input will go beyond what the prompt is able to do, even if the prompt is simple. You make it simple so it works more often, but it will still break. So it's very interesting, I find, as a creative programmer, because it means you need to build some robustness path into your code. Like the way we've done it in most situations, we found that we have some path through some prompt-based functions that we can bypass. And basically, if one of the prompts break in there, we can have a good default that we will run with, and that will be available, but we try to surface it to the user so that they know that they're running with the default version. I mean, we do it also because as programmers, we want to see that even when it's live. We're working with smaller scale systems these days. But yeah, like the key is to think of them as functions that can break, and as a result, to think of these escape path or these alternate robust path as things that need to be integrated into your software.
All right. Thank you, Philip. That's very insightful. I think we now have like 3 minutes left, I think, so we can open the floor for questions from the audience. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Just wonder, have you ever observed something like attack to this kind of prompt system? I mean, like attacker usually find some interesting way to break this kind of things, right? So just wonder, is it happens in this kind of product? And also, your slide is very interesting. How can we get it? Yeah.
I can share the slide deck with you. I'd be happy to. I talked to the organizers after and send it over. I'm not sure I got the first part of the question. Sorry, the sound is a bit choppy.
Yeah, I mean the attack to this prompt and this prompt. So you create a product where you can have some kind of prompts user can ask, right? But have you observed that there are somebody who tries to attack that kind of system?
Yeah. So attacks on the prompt system, you see that all the time with chatbots, right? People trying to jailbreak them, figure a way to. This totally exists in our systems. What I didn't tell you about is how do we get these pieces of user data that gets used to parameterize our system. Our recommender system is parameterized by a block of text. How do we get that? One way to get it is to ask the users to write that block of text, just a plain description of what they would want their recommender to do for them. But it's a lot of work. Like users don't like to write a big block of text before they actually get an experience. Another way we derive them is through chat interaction. When the users chat with a chatbot, we can derive what block of text should be used in order to parameterize their experience. And the latest thing that we're about to release in a month or so is a system that looks at the user's interaction with the platform or any software anywhere and build that block of text over time so that the experience later is good. All of these have, like, it's a lot easier for a user to try to jailbreak one of these systems when they have access to the chatbot or to the piece of text itself. It's much harder if the text is derived over time. But in practice, what I can say is that, yes, people will try to break it. If you are using them to power a chatbot, I think it's kind of a problem. You've all seen the example of someone chatting with a chatbot at a car dealership and asking the chatbot at the car dealership for a cupcake recipe, and their car dealership gives them a cupcake recipe, right? Like, we don't want that to happen. But in our case, these experiences are integrated with our software. So the outcome, if someone tries to break it, it's just that we'll take these alternate paths that I was talking about earlier, And it's not as disturbing to the experience as having your chatbot tell you a joke that you wouldn't want on your platform or something. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Philip. As much as we'd like to talk with you all day, the time is up, so we're gonna move to the next session. But everyone, please thank you, Philip, for giving us a talk.
Thank you very much.
And I'll give this back to Rick.
Thank you once again. Thank you once again, Philip and Reza, for those insightful Q&A sessions. So let's dive into the next session, which is fireside chat. So let me quickly once again introduce and welcome Vincent Kurnia Limanto, Head of Growth Industry from AWS. He has an extensive experience in driving growth for industry-leading companies with a focus of leveraging cloud technologies to optimize business outcomes. Second, we have Brata Rafli here, the head of a startup ecosystem at AWS. Brata has played a pivotal role in nurturing and scaling startups, helping them to integrate AI and cloud solutions to drive innovations and growth. Third, we have Dr. Yopan. Yes, Dr. Yopan, the government account lead at AWS, specializes in working with government sectors to implement AI-driven solutions that enhance public services and governance. And last but not least, Cheryl Ang will be from Alpha JWC, is going to be the moderator for today. Please welcome.
Yes.
Welcome on stage.
Gentlemen, have a seat. Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to kick off very quickly, right? First question, long list of questions, gentlemen. How do you adapt your sales strategies, targeting different customer segments such as startups, established industries, and obviously government entities, right? So between the three of you here, I think you cover all three sectors. Would you like to go first, Abe?
All right, so let me just go straight into it. First thing first, my name is Vincent, this is Brada, this is Yopan. To answer the question, how do we adjust our sales strategy to different segments of the market? First thing first, look in our attire today. Three of us represent three different segments. We wear three different things, right? So look, basically what we need to do first thing first is really to understand the segment where we are in, the customers that you are trying to look at. Now, the way I look at it is really try to understand the industry and then try to understand the customers. I never sell to government before, so I cannot talk about selling to governments, but really try to understand the industry, right? What's happening in that industry? Like, what are the changes that happen? Let me take, for example, if someone today want to come into healthcare, to hospitals, there are certain things that you may want to understand, right? Take for example, what are the requirements of hospital? PII regulations, right? The backup requirements. The requirements maybe to connect with Satu Sehat at some point, right? And try to understand the landscape of the company itself from a technology point of view as well as from the business point of view, right? The technology point of view, hospitals may have the likes of hospital information system, electronic medical records, PACS for the radiologies, and so on and so forth. And from the process point of view, they may look at everything from triage all the way to assigning doctors and discharging patients to invoices and everything. Those are the processes of the organizations. By understanding the industry, the organization's processes, it helps you to know where your product and services may come in and how you can adjust and pivot your sales strategy over there, as well as try to understand the organization itself, like who they are, right? And like who are the leaders, are there any changes in the leadership, the visions, the directions, so that you know where to position yourself. Look, I'll take a pause for the moment. I'll give the two gentlemen opportunity to as well to add on.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Brata, head of startup ecosystem. For startup, it's a bit easier, right? I think because startup is start with the digital native. You know, it only makes sense, right, for startup to start with cloud, just because from the cost of infrastructure, there's no capex, it's more OPEX, right? The second thing, they can actually scale globally, expand globally, just in minutes. The third, actually, they can actually, when they grow, they can scale up. When they go down, they can actually cost optimize very easy. But beyond that, for startups, is that for a company like us, it has to be more than technology, right? it's more leveraging our ecosystem to help the startup grow. Because at the end of the day, for a company like that, startup is actually our future revenue generation. So we have to make sure they grow scaling very high, so that when they grow, we grow. Well, how does the business does it? We leverage our ecosystem itself, right? We help startup by co-selling. We help startup by expansion, go to market together, either going to global, either leveraging to region, right? As you know, we have our parent company is Amazon, right? We also have a fresh produce called Amazon Fresh. So we have, for example, we have a lot of startups that are actually creating fresh produce for them to be able to sell to American market, leveraging Amazon and Whole Food fresh produce, right? So how can we leverage and with Vincent is managing medium enterprise, medium businesses, as well by Yopan government. I am representing startup, over 1,300 startup of our customer, and we are actually creating ecosystem, creating semacam solution for his customer. So rather than his customer creating their own solution, I tell them, you know what, I have 1,300 with different divisions from fintech to health tech to AIs right now that we can serve to your customers, as well with the Dr. Yopan's customers, you know, the government institution, state-owned enterprise. Now, we work together with this division, and then we are representing the startup to leverage our companies to serve his company. So hopefully with that creating ecosystem, we can help the startup to grow, and when the startup is sustained, we can actually have that businesses. Lastly, we help as well co-marketing. You know, we create a lot of events and where we put the startup on stage to help them do co-sale and put them on stage to talk about their product. So that's startup businesses for us.
Okay, thanks so much. So my name is Yopan, so I'm managing for the government sector. So I think, yes, every single sector, they have their own challenges, but I think for the government, this is the most challenges sector. The first is about the regulation. So there's still like a cloud-first policy. It's ideally cloud-first policy in the country, right, like Singapore. But in Indonesia, we don't have it. Even we have PDNS, right, as you know. So they move to PDNS all the time. And then they would like to use AWS. They have to get approval from the Ministry of Finance as well as the committee. But don't worry about that, because we have a lot of customers actually. A lot of AWS, they move from PDNS to AWS. The second issue is for the competencies, right? So cloud is something new for Indonesia. In our customer, they can differentiate between cloud and data center. What is cloud? What is data center? It's the same or not, right? So that's competency level. The second one is about procurement cycles. Like a procurement in AWS, pay as you go, right? But in government, fixed costs. How do you make flexible costs into the fixed costs? And now we have to budgeting for the next year's budget. Very difficult for us as well. But because of we are customer obsessed, we have to follow our customer environment rules and so on. So we adopt ourselves. Pay as you go become the fixed costs. Procurement become like catalog and also tender and so on. Regulation is also engage with government how to influence them to make country get together with the cloud flexibility, agility, and so on. I think that's it for my side.
If you could just expand that a little bit more detail, right? You spoke about procurement processes, you know, and I think it's a very good point you want to identify that the three of you are addressed according to your industry.
Coincidence. Dress job, right? So just going back to the governance. You just share a bit more how do you tailor your approach? I'm sure the three of you have different approaches, and the government sector's approach is different, maybe more challenging. So how does AWS do it?
Yeah, sure, that's a very good question. So first, about the procurement, maybe budgeting cycles first, right? So if government would like to spend the money, they have to make the budget plan 1 year before, which is now, August is budgeting plan for the next year, right? That's the first. The second one, they have to put fixed budget for the next year. As you know, AWS is pay as you go, right? They can use anything. but we have to do some calculation first. We did POC. We provide the fixed cost for the budgeting. And once they are ready for the budget, no, before they get the budget, we have to also help them how to get approval from Kominfo and Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance. Why use AWS instead of PDNS, you know, right? So first, because of SLA, our SLA is very high. Our performance is very good. Our services is a lot, right? So if they can convince Kominfo and Ministry of Finance to get approval from the budget, and then they will get the budget. Once the budget is released, we do tender. And we do also e-catalog. You know e-catalog, right? E-catalog is very easy in Indonesia. You just put as a partner on the LKPP, and then put e-catalog AWS, maybe like 1 million or maybe 1 billion rupiah for the AWS usage. And then customer just click it and then do it, right? For the tender, it takes like 2 months, but for e-catalog, only 1 week. So usually on October, my customer asks me, hey, I have some remaining money. How to spend it to AWS? I said that, just click to e-catalog for 500 million. Easy, 1 week. They spend the money for good things, right? Rather than just like renting for hotels and so on. They can use AWS because AWS pay as you go, right? Once they do e-catalog or tender, we have also one thing, direct appointment, penunjukan langsung, PL, right? Before 200 million rupiah, they can do PL. But the problem is, once everything is done, in the next year, they will get audit from the BPK, auditor government agencies. This is something difficult as well. Meaning that if you do cloud procurement in the beginning until end of year, everything must be fit from the document, procurement, reporting, billing, and so on. Otherwise, you got jail. So this is the challenge on the government side. Meaning we have to also be careful providing the documentation, billing, reporting, and so on to make sure that everybody is safe. Yeah.
Traditionally, how long does it take for the whole procurement, the tender, everything? What's the process? And would you say that AWS's value proposition is also how you help them shorten that so-called cycle, sales cycle?
Yeah, so maybe the longest time is for the engagement. I engage with customer like 3 years. 3 years, until 3 years, they never say yes to purchase AWS. You can imagine, right, how difficult we are. Once they said that, okay, I think AWS is good. Let's try the small things. Website, let's say just like 100 million rupiah. And then they start to do with PL, direct appointment. Only like 1 week, they can just purchase it, right? Once they try to use AWS and this is okay, they will use AWS for the next year, which is a long, different budgeting cycle, right? But after that, they will increase very significant. I saw from my customer, I engage like 3 years. In my first years, I only get like maybe 100K ARR. But after that, increase like 5 times. And after that, increase like 3 times and so on. So once they try to use AWS, they understand how to cover the procurement side, budgeting, and so on. They will say that, oh, the AWS is good. Performance is okay, auditable, and then also everything is fit with the government regulation and so on. And then after that, they will use AWS more and more. So that's why our revenue is like this, very slow in the beginning, but after that, acceleration.
Thanks, Dr. Yopan. So speaking of 3 years is a long time, right? And speaking of 3 years, then Vincent, just question. So you must have worked with companies with legacy technology, legacy processes and all. How do you convince them, even legacy mindsets, right? So what's your approach?
Right. So, well, I had the opportunity to work with many of the companies from all sizes, to be frank, right? From small, medium business to medium to large enterprises. And yes, echoing what Dr. Yopan said, the sales cycle, the larger the companies, even if they are not government, can be long, right? It could be 1 year and more. Now, then the question, like how do we maintain that, and as well as how do we change that from, look, those companies may be there for like decades, way before us AWS exists sometimes, right? So they do have a lot of legacies and everything. Now, in AWS, we do have what we call as the stage of cloud adoptions or stage of adoptions, where we believe, I mean, like it's not really, like silver bullet or everything has to go through that cycle, but a lot of the times I find it true that many companies start from a small project when they build the foundations before they do big bang migrations and then reinventions. Meaning to say they start from small project. And as what Dr. Yopan says, you may want to find out from certain things that matters to the company and just starting small somewhere, right? Find a use cases that rings relevance to them. Maybe there are new change in the company. Maybe they are trying to innovate in a certain area of the business. So instead of just trying to, hey, change everything today, they may not want to do it. And it's too risky for many of the companies, right? And if I'm serving big banks and I tell them, move your core banking to cloud today, they will be freaked out and ask me to go out from the door, right? But if they tell me, if I'm speaking with them and they tell me, hey, we do have problem in our customer acquisitions. We do want to understand how we do more cross-selling, upselling to our existing customer base. And this is how AWS can potentially help you. They may be more open to have the conversations, right? So try to find those projects, try to find the use cases, and building on from that, as what Dr. Yopan mentioned, right? Building the familiarities, building the knowledge awareness within the company, building the process procurement, so that as you grow in the deal cycle, in the deal size, in the relevance of the company, you can then exert more. I think I would say there, right? So, but I think one thing super important here, as if you're working with mid to large enterprises and potentially government as well, is to really maintain the touch points across the long sales cycle. Like, it's not going to be like touch and go. Like, you can't just be like pitching one time, demoing the next time, and then wishing for sign order the following meeting. That's may not be happening, right? But what we need to do is really to understand the organizations, expanding our connections network, try to get the buy-in, as well as try to understand what every personas, every part of the team really needs, right? I mean, if I'm talking to, even if I'm talking to IT team, within the IT team, you have the server team, you have the application team, you have the network team, you have the IT sec team, right? They have all different interests, different needs, different policies where I need to satisfy as well. So I think that's some of the lens that I can add on.
I think that's great. So it's not just by organization, right? It's by your internal clients within the different functions, right?
Yeah.
How it's relevant to them, how it impacts their own KPIs, right?
Exactly.
So next question then, Brata, right? There are a lot of startups out there, small, big, medium. How do you identify the innovative ones, right? Or the different startups to partner with, to grow with, and to convince them that, you're in seed stage now, or maybe you're at the early stage, but AWS is the partner to grow with you.
So with AWS, we work for all startups, right? Cross-industry, seed, Series A's to laters, right? So the difference that we do is that besides providing technology, we provide mentorship, right? We work with VCs, to identify the innovative startups, and then we work with, we work with Alpha, for example, right now, yeah, in this program, we work with PJARS as well, right? And then we have many mentors within the AWS to help them to create, for example, MVP, to create, to give them a case study or best practices. So this startup with the great innovation don't have to create from zero in terms of their solution, right? They have the great idea, and then we have a mentorship to provide them, to show them the way, right? And on top of it, we also provide funding as well, in terms of credit funding from $1,000 to up to $200,000, right? And with that, they can actually doing POCs, they can actually trial and error, they can actually try without using their own investment, right? So because in AWS, in the cloud, there's so many services that I can actually just plug and play, from computing services, data analytic to AI right now, right? And mostly, once we found an innovative way, we work. My division, we don't really actually sales, right? Because it's a startup is actually, as I tell you, it's a digital native, right? But what our job actually, how can we connect this innovative startup to get the revenue, right? How, is that with business matchmaking? Is that I am begging Pak Vincent and Pak Yopan to be connected? Yeah, begging. That's right. Like kissing his hands. And that's what I do actually, literally kissing his hands, right? To bring the startup to in front of their enterprise customers also, and also once we found these innovative startups, we work with VCs. We promote them to expand to globally, leveraging our networks as well, right? So those are the things that we do for our startups, Cheryl.
So basically, their success is your success.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So I'm gonna throw one question to Dr. Yopan because he's a very busy man. Also, he has to scoot off very quickly. So I'm gonna put him in a little bit of spot, right? So Dr. Yopan, what's your usual spiel or sell when you meet someone from the government, right? Whether it's over an informal coffee or formal meeting, to why should you use cloud? What's your pitch to them?
Yeah, to be honest with you, we have to do like two layers for this, right? The first is formal, of course. Even we have to send the official letter, invitation. We invite, but in their location. You can imagine, right? So we invite for the official invitation, and then we do like a workshop, one-on-one session, and so on, right? But after that, usually we follow up with the workshop. I mean the details one. Like first is like a one-on-one session with the head of Pusdatin or maybe the DG or minister. And after that, we do workshop with the technical teams. On the workshop, we identify the workloads. Because on the first meeting, they don't have like an idea how to use cloud, what is cloud and so on, right? On the workshop, we can identify, this is GenAI, what kinds of the use case and so on. Once we got the use case, we provide the POC. The POC to try and then make them comfortable with the cloud and so on. After that, we do a lot of like a discussion with the procurement team, how to do sizing and then e-catalog and then audit and so on, right? And besides of that, besides the official one, of course, we do also the unofficial one. Usually they love to meet like in coffee shop in after working hours and chit chat and so on, right? Usually on that chit chat is very important. This is not like a negative one, right? But they said something that may be very difficult to say on the official one. Let's say, how if the BPK asks me about this one? Cloud is invisible. There is no physical device. How to answer that, right? Something that maybe they cannot answer it in the front of the team, right? So once they understand about the cloud and so on, and then they provide the blessing to the team to follow up and so on, right? So that's on the AWS side. Also, we engage with partner for the like a dirty hand or maybe deep dive on the budgeting, remaining the budget, how to calculation, and then connect to a lot of team in customers and so on, right? So we are working with a partner very close. All of our customers always use partner. The first, because of the billing must be in rupiah. The second one, they do underground working with the customer side. Yes, this is something that we do in government.
So basically helping them to identify the problems instead of just shoving so-called the solution to them, and then helping the person who's going to pitch it upwards to be able to sell it internally also.
That's right. Even we have to identify our champion. Yeah. Our champion is the people that would like to move and have good vision, and then become the champion and become our speakers as well in the WS event.
Great tactic. Thank you, Dr. Yopan. So, I mean, the next question, right, Vincent. So, in mature industries, what strategies do you find the most effective in driving growth and then obviously maintaining AWS's competitive edge?
Right. So, mature industries. So, I think, look, I had the privilege to be with AWS for 7.5 years, and even from AWS Indonesia, arguably, we went through from the evolutions from coming to the market where it was still nascent and developing to right now is, I would say, not matured, but maturing, right? Maturing in many sense, but there are still pockets of customers, segments where it's still emerging. So I think there are differences in there, right? Let me lay down the differences. I think when you come into markets where, when I say developing or early nascent, It doesn't necessarily mean the whole country is nascent, right? Or the whole country is emerging. It could be the solutions itself. It could be a part of it. So when cloud computing was introduced in when we came to Indonesia in 2017, 2018, it was still pretty new. Many people wasn't sure what is cloud computing, with the exceptions of startups, digital native, like the Traveloka, Tokopedia, and so on. They knew what is cloud computing, but the rest of the market, they were still asking what's the difference between this and my server with a web hosting and so on and so forth. So a lot of educations, a lot of awareness building, brand affinity need to be made in the early part of the game, right? You got to find your champion in the market. You got to create communities. You got to find lighthouse wins, lighthouse customers that can advocate you in front of the market to help educate the market together. In this sense, typically you may not have a lot of competitors, and if they are competitors, they face the same challenge. They also want to let the market understand what are you trying to do, and there was no category yet in the market, right? But now, as you fast forward few years until today. There are industries in the market, even within the traditional enterprises, where I would say it's more maturing or more mature, like for example, media and entertainment, right? Naturally, they have been adopting digital technologies, move to cloud and everything. So and also, of course, startups, digital native, they are mature market, and those that are emerging are in the area of FSI, retail, FSI, retail, healthcare. They are maturing. Those that are still nascent, even until today, are the likes of manufacturing, mining, right? So there are different things that I will do into different markets or different segments there. For those that are more matured, really is to understand deeper and to find your niche, right? What is our value propositions? And you need to understand that from when you are selling to market we are still nascent and market they are more mature, even your value proposition and messaging could be different. When I'm talking to startups back then or digital native, I'm talking about agility. I'm talking about innovations. I'm talking about the breadth and depth of services that we have. Anything from EC2 our databases and everything, right? But when I'm talking to enterprises, I need to talk about the security and governance, right? I need to talk about how do you create the governance within your organizations and organizing your people for change in the future, preparing them for that, right? So I think there are a lot of things that we need to consider when we're looking into the market. And I think understanding that and employing different tactics will be important. Yeah.
Thank you, Vincent. So Dr. Yopan, I understand if you need to leave, please, jangan malu. Don't be, just, do you have any, before you leave, do you have any, I will continue the panel session. Right, but I'm conscious of your time also.
Yeah.
Do you have any, advice for any salespeople here who have to deal with the government side? What would your advice be for them?
Yeah, so I think, thanks so much for the opportunity to say, right? So I think the first is the tenacity, right? Tenacity means that the ulet, right? So you have to be ulet. I think this is for all segments, but especially for the government, because very long sales cycle as well, and very tough because of they don't know what cloud is. They just cloud, social media, cloud is Drive and so on, right? Very difficult to say to them, right? So you have to be like a very wise to educate them. A lot of times, even like a times say the same things because very hard. But once they get the buy-in, they understand the value of cloud, they understand how to do procurement and so on, believe me, they will love you. They will become your success customer, and they will enjoy your technology. They become more agile, more success and so on. Maybe I can, maybe you understand from the media, right? Some minister, they use AWS, and they can move very fast. They can provide the better public service for the citizen like us and so on. Because in public sector, our mission is not only revenue. Our mission is helping our citizen, which is us as a citizen, right? So you have to become like a good citizen to advise your government. It's not like AWS to advise, because if you become AWS to advise, you're like a sales. But if you become a citizen, can asking something good for the public service, you become trusted partner for them as well, and put yourself at the advisor rather than just like a sales. So they will accept you, they will listen your advice and so on. So I think this is maybe something that currently we do in the team to put ourselves as the advisor for the government, put ourselves as a citizen to us expecting something good for the public services. I think that's it from my side.
Thank you,
Really
Dr. Yopan.
apologize. I have
No,
to
no,
go
no,
for
don't worry,
another
don't worry,
event.
don't worry. So basically two things, right? The two T's, transaction, but also trust, right? So thank you, Dr. Yopan.
Thank you.
So,
Sorry, I have to leave. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
sorry, Brata and Vincent, you stuck with me, right? So Brata, I have a question for you. You know, I know we also talked to, we've spoken of Google, obviously, Microsoft, and there's yourself, AWS, and then Alibaba. So everyone is wooing the startups, the same startups, right? Technically, how would you say? How would you convince a startup that really we're better? You should go with us, or we would be your best partner. What is that conversation like?
Right. So I guess as many times I mentioned earlier that, you know, as a cloud provider, we can't just provide technology. Technology is smology. What do you call it? Smology? Something like that. But, you know, everybody does the same, right? That the thing is, for startup, they need help more than that. They need help more than technology. They need help to sustain. They need help to scale. You know, I mean, a startup, they have idea, but in terms of sales, they may not have the capability. In terms of network, they may not have the capability. In terms of operational, they may not have. That's where the cloud provider like us, a big company like us, should jump on it to help them, right? And this is what we do, right? We work, we leverage our own team. Some of my team, I myself am an ex-founders for 8 years, so I know what you guys went through. I know what's the pain, and I know what's the medicine that we can give from the AWS, right? That's number one. Number two, how can we leverage AWS network globally within AWS or AWS customer globally, that we can drive our startups to sell or to at least leverage the services. We have in AWS, we call, we have the APN, Amazon, AWS Partner Network. It's almost like an Amazon.com where you have a merchant, but this is a AWS merchant. So when you are an APN, or when a startup become an APN, partners with us, all of a sudden your solution is globally available, ladies and gentlemen. So that means your startup, it doesn't need to open in many countries. You just stick with it here. And AWS will help, globally will help sell that solution as part of AWS family solution. So that's the thing that AWS will do, you know, to push to a startup to grow, right? Another thing, we have a lot of events, right? I think it's coming up. I encourage, I want to invite every one of you to come to our summit. It's actually on the September. This is one of our biggest event yearly. I think about 4,000, 5,000 people, yeah, Pak Vincent, yeah. Where we, it's on Friday. I mean, just happened, Thursday, sorry, Thursday. Just happened that Post Paulus is coming as well, so we can pray together in the summit during event as well, right? But yeah, we post our startups to speak in front of our customer, 5,000 people, right? We help market them, you know, to put them on stage, some of these innovative startups that we have, right? I think some AI startups are coming up as well to present in front of 5,000 enterprise customer, public sectors and small medium businesses, right? And yeah, and again, we're Amazon. We have Amazon Produce. We help several startup company to sell their fresh produce to Whole Foods in America already, right? So that's many things that we want to leverage because I think it's like what you're saying, sir, like your success is our success, right? Because if you not success, that's gonna, because that's our future. We need to invest in our future. So we do a lot of investment on our network, and also our funding as well, right? So that's the thing that makes us different, Shirley.
So if there are other founders here, if other cloud providers are talking to you, that is your, you know, Barata's spiel already to convince you that they're the better people, right? So I'm not gonna name the other names.
Some
So
people make mistake, but you know what? At the end of the day, you're gonna come to the right way, the right path. You know, it's okay.
I'll let him say it. I'll let him say it, right? Just in case this is recorded, yeah.
It's forgiven.
So I just want to open it up to the floor. Does anyone have any question for Pak Vincent and Brata? Please feel free to, yeah.
Good morning. To touch on the topic of trust, how to convince the client to buy our services if the sales from non-tech, because actually I came from financial institutions and we met a lot of sales team, but most of them are from non-tech, so we got this kind of like uncrossed bridge, so it's hard to communicate with them. So do you have maybe some tips to some non-tech from someone from non-tech background sales to convince and to get the trust from the clients?
From me, I think,
Yeah.
just to clarify the questions, yeah, I think how can you convince or get contact from the non-tech customers, right?
Yeah.
Because you've always been in the tech customers, right?
Yeah.
Right, that's how it is.
Yeah.
Okay. For startup is, I think overall, right, at the end of the day, it's about selling, right? And for me, selling in even more so in Indonesia is relationship first, right? You need to build that relationship, right? Before anything, before technology, before AI, stuff like that, right? You need to build, because Indonesia, I've been selling for 25 years. Emang tukang jualan, some people already know me from years before, right? So I'm selling from airline ticket to IT software, IT hardware, digital marketing, apalagi itu, many deh. So the one thing, the red tape that I see is friends buy from friends, regardless that product is, right? Because they know if something messed up, they're gonna come back to your friends, dude, what's up, right? And I've been selling to my friends years, different product, for airline tickets to IT software to something, right? So that relationship you need to build, whether it's on tech or non-tech, right? And that's number one. Number two, I think as a startup, like I was a founder as well, you kind of need to create your branding in the market, constant branding, right? About who you are, about what you do, about what you're good at. And now these days, much simpler. Back then, I have to use agencies, right? For me to kind of brand, and it's expensive. Right now, social media is free, right? Leverage LinkedIn, leverage Facebook, leverage Instagram, right? How can you brand your company, yourself, to kind of create that awareness, kind of create that perspective that you are who you are. You are selling AI, you are health tech, you are financial services, right?
Yeah.
Number two. Number three, as a founder, are you founder or no?
No, actually from the cybersecurity team, so we met
Okay.
a lot of like some big services, but most of them when we do some demonstrations, most of them are from non-tech. So when we ask some much more technical, more specified question, most of them cannot even answer it, and it's kind of this bridge in communication is
Right.
very hard to tackle.
Yeah.
And I just want to know if, in case in the lens of sales, what should they do before preparing for the demo?
Yeah. But I think you made the wrong context, right? You need to find the right contact.
Yeah.
Who is the business decision makers? Who's the business side of it, right? And it goes on to number three for me. I think if you're startup Indonesia, this is actually going to Indonesian startup, yeah. Not only branding, by going to social medias, by you going on stage, but also start going to joining associations, right? If you're a financial services, joining some event, some association like a AFTEC, for example. If you're an AI, you work with, you hear about AIIP, there's going to be a lot of AI. As a founder, you need to be out there because you are the marketer yourself. You are the the biz dev. You are your own biz dev, right? So that's your job. You know, that's your actually to bring that flag of your company, right? So go into association, you know, talk to people, networking, leverage cloud provider like us that has the ecosystem. We have many events. We have a business matchmaking, and I myself become a deal sources, as you know, right? Because VC is asking me, who is the good startup? Who's the good founders? Who is Brad? Who is the actually has a promising startup? This is VCs asking me, right? So by you are actively, proactively going to the market and then present yourself and then persistent, like Dr. Yopan saying, right? One day you're gonna meet the right guy. One day you the right person for you to start connecting. If you talk to this person and these guys is not giving you the right answer, that's not the right connection. You gotta go find a way. You know, like a water. You know, like, I hope that answers, Miss Mbak.
Before I add on anything, like, do you have any clarification questions? And does that answer questions?
Actually, it already answered.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
I will not add too much. Yeah.
Halo, saya Tommy dari mulai.com. Kami itu dari anti financial crime. Jadi kita dealing with banks and fintech. Jadi kalau misalnya untuk sekarang, mungkin sebelum itu aku jawab pertanyaan yang sebelumnya ya. Saya pernah pitching ke salah satu bank di Indonesia, state owned bank, right? In the meeting like they say yes, yes, yes. At the end like pas lagi chit chat bilang, ngerti nggak Pak? Enggak. Kenapa nggak tanya? Nggak berani Pak. Nanti atasan saya kira saya nggak ngerti gitu kan. Nah itu jadi experience-nya kita juga sih. Nah talking about AI ya, kalau dari kita itu apalagi anti financial crime kita belum benar-benar masuk ke AI karena this is the industry where anything goes wrong people go to jail kayak gitu. Nah understanding mungkin dari sisi sales ya, bagaimana cara we sell AI in the way like how deep we can go in, how big use cases we can dig deeper, especially in the fintech sector, especially in the financial service sector that you can advise us. Yeah, thank you.
First of all, that's a very good question. You know what, dari sisi gua ya, itu kan berarti masalah regulasi penggunaan AI ya Mas ya. I think from kalau saya ya sebagai sales ya, you just sell it first because at the end of the day the customers actually making decision whether or not this is lewat because the one that has the regulation, the regulation is the customers, right? Customers leveraging AI to leverage their product, their fintech product, right? So kalau merekanya yang ternyata nggak boleh, bukan is not you, is the customers yang already leveraging. You are just providing solutions. So my take is unless you are actually doing transaction, unless you are doing payment, unless you are doing it, there's no nggak ada izin kan, nggak ada izinnya AI, right? Yang ada izinnya di sisi customer, di fintechnya itu yang ada OJK perizinan, payment gateway, e-money dan segalanya. Tapi kalau dari sisi AI sih, there's no really, pasti kalau saya bilang nggak ada regulasinya ya, regulasinya di customer side. So to me there's no not to worry ya. I mean regardless itu fintech atau health tech atau apa gitu loh. Boleh.
Izin ya, aku tambahin. Aku dari backgroundnya IT juga nih ya. Jadi kalau misalnya kita ngomongin tentang programming, kita tahu what worst can come out. Kayak coding kalau exception handling apa yang terjadi gitu. Kalau AI, you might ask question, they might answer strawberry, something like that. And this is the regulated entity, they will answer like something like that. It might not be acceptable. So that's I mean like our team is not yet confident enough in selling AI, but we willing because this is the way. Karena dari AI sendiri yang aku lihat dari first layer use case-nya itu adalah summarization. Mungkin buat teman-teman yang belum tahu dari fintech sama bank, kalau misalnya mereka lihat ada suspicious transaction, mereka harus bikin reporting. Reporting ini harus di-report ke PPATK. Nah, in order for them to create this report, some of the company they do it manually. we want to leverage AI to do that, but we don't want to create a report like we'll use AI then it's respond like some funny stuff like that. So yeah, that's my consideration.
Iya, seperti saya bilang sih Mas, I think yang punya regulasi yang tidak boleh apa tidak boleh dari sisi customer, ya kan? Persis saja kayak Anda jual senjata ditembak orang, orangnya mati, yang salah siapa? Anda apa customer? Ya kan? So that's the very thing. Unless there's regulation for specific AI, it's okay. There's a lot of my customer nggak masuk ke fintech ya. For contohnya one of the lagi hot customer kita meeting dari AI, itu dia selling dia meeting journal, jadi bisa offline, online meeting, terus bisa di summary, bisa bikin analisis, bisa langsung call to action, itu dipakai ke Telkomsel, ABRI, Lemhanas, dan sebagainya, mereka pakai semua gitu loh. So dari sisi saya sih nggak masalah, biasanya kalau saya, kadang-kadang saya juga di ini sama teman-teman, saya mendingan minta maaf daripada minta izin sih, biar gitu aja.
Just want to add something, right? Itu betulnya when you say there's challenges, true, there are challenges, but at the same time I see opportunity, because I mean, you rightly mentioned, right? Those generative AI, terutama when you do summarizations, asking prompt. I think Dr. Philip also mentioned that, like bisa jawabnya ngawur, gitu kan? That's an opportunity because like no one else has figured it out, and there are many people facing the same challenges, right? So if you are there with the customers, you are there working with them to help them untuk ngatasin ini, then you'll be the trusted advisor at the end, right? At the end of the day, there is no foolproof AI solutions to begin with, and also every single company, kayak kata Brata, they have their own processes, they have their own QC. Come on, if they release the product to market without QC, come on, right? But at the same time, you need to be there to help them, gitu ya. Bukan kayak dilempar ke mereka, look, do whatever that you want to do with it, like, but you are there with them, like help them to go through the process. And at the same time, I just want to clarify that there are other potentials of use of AI, nggak cuma harus generative AI, gitu kan? Like you can use generative AI for the likes of summarizations, content creations, asking a natural language, but you can also use traditional AI. But misalnya helping them to identify potential frauds, creating the propensity list of what are potential frauds, that will help to increase their productivity. So you can try to solve problems from different angles as well. Itu sih mungkin.
Any other questions? Maybe?
Lagi?
Halo, nama saya Ikhwan. Jadi mungkin menyambung juga sih tadi terkait banking sama fintech. Nah, kita juga ngerjain AI, cuma mungkin lebih ke basicnya lagi gitu. Jadi kalau di banking atau fintech tuh ada regulasi yang menyatakan buat data center tuh harus di Indonesia gitu. Nah, jadi ini sekarang jadi permasalahan juga di kita ketika mau buat ke banking atau apa. Nah, itu kayak gimana sih dari AWS buat tackling problem ini gitu. Jadi kan ada beberapa kondisi AWS kan di luar gitu. Jadi kayak gimana biar solusi buat regulasi tersebut gitu, buat yang banking gitu.
Okay, so I think first thing first, AWS is already here in Indonesia, just in case you miss out. So kita udah ada di Indonesia with 3 different availability zones. So kita nggak cuma bilang we have in Jakarta, tapi within Jakarta itself we have 3 different availability zones with actual distance. So they are not building side by sides, right? They are not within the same complex. They are different places. You can almost say they are different cities around Jakarta, right? What does it mean? It means for you and for your customers, data sovereignty, it's there, right? Because you can put the data here in Indonesia, right? Number 2, you can build your applications on high availability and disaster recovery mode, meaning the masalah soal apakah down, apakah nanti aplikasinya mati, apa segala, you can actually build that to anticipate hal-hal tersebut kayak gitu kan. So we are already here in Indonesia. So if you are not using AWS yet, I mean, might as well I said it. If you're not using AWS yet and you're using other provider that are not in Indonesia, it's maybe an opportunity to try Brada's advice to try AWS. But anyway, Brada want to add something?
Just want to add, Mas. I think your statement is correct. The data center has to be Indonesia. I think we are the only one that is having the true data center. Apa artinya that true data center? Jadi kita manage, kita yang punya tanahnya, kita yang punya AC-nya, kita yang punya listriknya, kita yang punya airnya, itu data center. Jadi kita we invested about 95 triliun rupiah untuk build this data center yang kita jagain, security dari kita, orang-orang yang apanya tuh, tadi sudah bilang ya, listriknya dari kita, jadi full on data center kita yang manage di Indonesia. Compared to others ya, I'm not saying siapa, tapi I'm saying others yang what we call it co-location, right? Yang co-location di mana, yes, your data center is there, but actually you rent it from a landlord, a local landlord, right? So it's not really 100% data centers karena kalau landlord tiba-tiba, gue matiin lah, gue naikin lah rentingnya, right? So it's not really fully on your responsibility, right? Where in AWS, that's fully our responsibility. Makanya kita punya tim data center, kita nggak tahu, udah kayak CIA. We don't even know these guys, we don't even know where it is because it's so secret. Because if we know, kalau ada orang yang bilang itu di situ, itu data center punya kita semua, fully. Sementara kalau yang lain, itu data center di situ. Itu ada dia, ada A, ada B, ada C, ada D, satu lokasi di situ semua gitu loh. So that's what makes us different than others. Makanya encourage, emang kadang-kadang orang salah. Jadi kita mau mencoba memperbaiki jalannya. Silakan telepon saya kalau udah.
Ya, mungkin pertanyaan lanjutan lagi gitu. Jadi mungkin di AWS kan ada ekosistem ya, service.
Yes.
Gitu. Nah, nggak tahu nih, service ini kan mungkin ada beberapa juga yang nggak di Indonesia. Nah itu mungkin pertanyaan, misalkan sekarang kan udah AI nih. Ya. Kan kemarin dilihat ada beberapa yang service AI itu yang emang nggak ada di Indo gitu. Itu kayak gimana ya dari AI?
Yes,
AWS, gitu.
Itu is a matter of time sih mas. I think because there's always a Q&A dari sononya untuk make sure the system is ready to put services. Cuman it's a matter of time. Every month kita kayaknya ada new services coming to Indonesia because now we just open. It only makes sense to put it in Indonesia more even faster than ever. Kita baru buka juga another 95T data center di Kuala Lumpur baru 2 minggu yang lalu. Jadi Southeast Asia itu udah banyak banget sekarang nih di Singapura, di Indonesia, di Kuala Lumpur, and continue growing, right? So it's just a matter of time. Teman, kalau waktu-waktunya saya nggak hafal ya Pak Vincentnya, mungkin Pak Vincent tahu.
Ya, saya juga mungkin mau tambahin sedikit. You are right that not all services is available here today. It may not be everything in the near future and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we two things, right? Number one, AWS, we don't have fanaticism to our own service and products. In a sense, we also open, and that's why we have partner ecosystem. That's why we have partner network. That's why we have marketplace. Kenapa? Untuk kasih opsi ke customer kita seluas-luasnya with all the solutions that are available in the world untuk kalian pakai untuk mau build your data analytics, warehouse, AI and everything to build on top of AWS here in Indonesia. That's number one. Number two, in Indonesia sendiri kita terus nambahin service terkait AI dan machine learning. In fact, I think from our GPU instance, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, Pak Rudy, there at the back, he's actually the head of solutions architect. Our GPU instance are already available in Indonesia, correct me if I'm wrong, Pak Rudy, so you can already build models and AI on top of AWS in Jakarta. Kayak gitu sih Pak. So, and of course, that's why we have a bunch of solutions architect that will be able to consult, discuss with you, and help you to architect and select the right services for your products. Itu sih.
Thank you, Brata and Vincent. So if you have any more questions, we have one more quick presentation, and then you can always approach Brata and Vincent directly to ask them questions after that. So I'll hand over to Ricky. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, Brata and Vincent and Cheryl, for those insightful sessions. So maybe one or two key takeaways that I can take. First one, before you sell the artificial intelligence, you need to have the actual intelligence. You need to have the relationship. So like tadi ada Dr. Yapan bilang, sometimes the sales cycles can take 3 years. So need persistence. Jangan ditolak sekali langsung kita udah nggak bisa. Jadi so keep persistence and let's move on to our next presentation. So this is the next theme, which is scaling AI, the strategies for optimizing and growth. But this time is from different perspective. This is coming from Sujoy Roy, which is the principal applied scientist. So he's going to talk about a topic which is from this perspective of applied scientists, focusing on technical and operation strategies that can drive growth together. So please welcome Reza and Sujoy to the stage, please. Thank you very much.
Shall we start? Reza, shall we start? Oh, yeah, okay. I'll just stand. Is that fine if I stand?
Yeah, feel free.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you everyone for being here, and thanks to Reza and the team here for inviting me. I'm a principal applied scientist with AWS Generative AI Innovation Center, and I'm based out of Singapore. So I've been with AWS for close to 6 years now, and presently my profile is about helping customers build GenAI solutions in production, right? So we are a global team, the Generative AI Innovation Center, and given the topic, I thought I'll share something about how some customers are scaling their AI workloads, particularly GenAI. Okay, so for today's topic, I thought that I'll cover a little bit on the challenges of GenAI. They're slightly different from AI applications that some of you might have built. Can I have a show of hands of how many people are experimenting with generative AI for their business or their solution that they're building? Okay, okay, great. And how many of you have tried in production? Okay, interesting. Okay, must say it's hard, right? So I'll talk a little bit on the challenges, and then very quick on the strategies that have worked for us and that work for some customers. Always the foundations are the basis for building anything big, right? So if you want to scale something, it should be built on good foundations, right? If the foundations are not strong, then you can't scale, right? So I'll talk about Amazon's working backward approach, which has worked over the years, and I'll show you if you have seen Amazon's app, our in-app experience. We have a assistant called Rufus, and Rufus basically helps. It's built on GenAI, so it helps you to ask questions, natural language questions, and basically select items that you want to buy, maybe the calorie content of things, and it gives you deeper level of insights into products that you want to buy, and helps you choose, right? So yeah. And finally, I'll just skim through this, a bit of strategy on governance, how to do ML governance, data governance, and so on, and which includes a stack of AWS services, what AWS offers to help you do that, okay? So firstly, our general solution for all ML solutions is there is a black box, which is the ML solution, and probably the ML model is a very small part of that solution. There's input, there's output, and it has several other integrations, right? In the traditional sense, this is how the ML solution looks like, correct? In the GenAI world, what has happened is that the input used to be some data, right? And output used to be another transformation of the data, right? For example, if you want to do a sentence classifier or a sentiment analysis, you put in some text, you get a sentiment, right, as an output, okay? Or you want to be a generic translation service, you put it in English, you get it in Bahasa Indonesia, right? So some translation service, correct? The thing with ML solutions today with generative AI is that the focus has moved from the data part at the input, when you are using so much data to train systems and so on, to the output, the legitimacy of what is getting generated, because these are generative solutions, right? So I'll pick a few issues with the input. Like for example, you have inconsistent workloads. How to deal with flaky workloads, right? Sometimes you have workload, sometimes you don't have anything to ask, right? No input. Like how will you set up a deployment? It's going to cost you something, right? So how to deal with these kind of inconsistent workloads. Then you have limits on the input size. So those who have played with generative AI solutions, they know that these LLMs or large language models have input size limitations, output size limitations, right? So if you see present models, they are close to around 200K is the input size. Sometimes actually you won't believe, it may seem that 200K is actually a lot, But if you look at some of the projects that we have done, we are doing, let's say, code transformations. It's actually much bigger. Okay, some of these code repositories are huge. Okay, then you have concepts like data drift, concept drift. Data drift is where your input data distribution has shifted. Concept drift is where your relationship between input and output, that distribution has shifted, right? Because the models are usually modeled to do this mapping from input to output, right? So it knows how to map it. But if that relationship has shifted, that's called concept drift, right? So then you need to retrain again, okay, some of these models. Then out of distribution data, this is very common because the present LLMs that you have are pre-trained, right? And then you have, let's say, a question on banking or something that is out of distribution that the LLM has not yet seen, how to deal with that kind of input. Then there's prompt injection. I'll talk a lot. This is very important for present use of LLMs, where a lot of prompts are input which are meant to either fish for information about the models or make the model behave in a certain way and so on. So this prompt injection is a big area. Of course, data integrity. On the ML solution side, there's complexity of solution. Like I remember, the first time I did something in production was we had to do a news recommendation system, right? It was a competition in Germany, and we were in Singapore, and the news recommendation required 100 milliseconds, less than 100 milliseconds of recommendations, right? And we were hosting it in Singapore, and we had used all kinds of natural language, technologies and so on to get data out of text and so on. And when we actually deployed it in Singapore, we were not receiving any requests, right? So for 3 days we were waiting, no requests. So we went in and said, what's the problem, right? So we realized that the latency between Singapore and Germany is 300 milliseconds, okay? So forget it, we can't do that. So we deployed it in Germany. Then also there were issues, right? Because we were doing too much processing, right? All these complex NLP that we were doing, thinking that we will do these, German to English and language transformations and so on, and they were not working. So finally, at least I think 5 days before the closing of the competition, we just switched to very simple algorithms, popularity based, right? We just take the most popular ones, give out the results. And lo and behold, we got the 3rd prize in the competition, right? So very surprising. We went to the conference and we realized that the guy who got the 1st prize had done even a simpler algorithm, right? So the lesson here is that complexity is not necessarily, when you do things in production, right? Complexity, intellectually it sounds very nice, right? We are all academics, some of us, right? But in production, you really have to work backwards from what is the customer's requirement and build your technologies according to that, right? So many of these issues with the present ML solutions, the models, the LLMs they are very slow, they are quite big, they take a lot of GPUs, right? How to deploy these big models. I mean, if you look at the Llama 3.1 model that recently were released, it has more than 400 billion parameters, right? So Amazon is helping, of course, in deploying this for you, and you can use it, use these endpoints, but it's still an issue if you're trying to do it yourself. Then the maintenance and of these deployments there's a trade-off. There's a recent paper called Frugal GPT that looks at this problem that should I use an LLM which is very good, like a GPT-4 or something like that, or should I use a simpler LLM and make more calls and get back the same result? So they did this experiment to do a trade-off, find out, right? So I call GPT-4 and I get back result. That's a quality, right? Some quality of result. I take a smaller model and I query it maybe 4 times and I achieve that quality. But my price is much less. Every call to that LLM, the price is much less. GPT is very expensive, right? So these are experiments that need to be done. So that's why what AWS provides you is this whole depth and breadth of LLMs to experiment with, right? So what we usually do is that we'll just run one result and okay, I'm happy with this output, and then forget about anything else, right? So this evaluation is I think is very important for us to understand what capabilities others are offering at a much cheaper price, and maybe I need to do 2-3 hits. Of course, if your latency is an issue, then that's an issue, right? But if latency is not, in many cases I've seen it's not, because you're actually doing offline experiments. In that case, you should give it a look, give it a try, okay? So Bedrock, Amazon Bedrock offers this whole range of models that you can try out and evaluate to understand, you know, what is your correct price point, right? The cost performance trade-off. Okay. Of course, there are other issues like growing data, and all these are much more complex problems, you know, particularly in recommender systems. If you're using graph-based models and so on, this will blow up your model size and so on. On the output side, I think this is the most critical part here, is the limits of the output size. So we were doing a project for PLC code generation. So programmable logic code, right? These are these small devices that goes into these Siemens devices, correct? And each PLC code is close to 20,000 lines of code, okay? This is called ladder code. These are huge lines of code, right? And how to generate a 20,000 line code when the maximum output tokens that an LLM generates is 4096. There's a limit that we presently have. Why? Because that's the sequential context that these LLMs can consider, right? So it's 4096. So how do you generate a 10,000 or 20,000 line code, you know, when your output limit is 4096? So you generate 4096, you add some extra information, ask the LLM again, and then it generates the rest of the output and so on. So we did a lot of experiments on how to generate this PLC code, right? So it's an experimentation, I must say. So these are limitations of present models, right? So you need probably a lot of experimentation, and AWS provides you with the ability. So output size is an issue that you need to consider. Then of course the output is also slow, correct? It's present LLMs, I think it's around 5 seconds to 40 seconds. For this is I'm talking about is first response, right? So there are different latency numbers. One is your first hit, 2 your finishing, right? And particularly if you're looking for chatbot kind of applications, right? You can't make the user wait for, let's say, 10 seconds to get an answer, right? So that's where it's very important how you you choose what kind of LLMs you choose is very important. Evaluation is probably the biggest one. I'll share this in the next slide. That, as I told you, that the data integrity when we were using ML models was important, right? How to clean data, how to gather data, you know, how to prepare the data for training these models and all. That was the biggest question in the traditional ML situation, right? Now what has happened is that with these pre-trained models, the input data issue has moved to the output, right? How to verify the output of these LLMs? Are they really good or not, right? Are they any use or not, right? Because remember, these are auto-generative, right? Sequential models, correct? They just generate in sequence. They don't understand structured output. They don't reason, right? So these are the issues with the present LLMs. And it's a generative model. It's not a predictive model. It's not a diagnostic model. It's a generative model. It generates output. And you are supposed to make sense of whatever it is generating. And I think there was a talk on prompting also. It's kind of an alchemy today, right? That I give it something, right? And I expect certain kind of behavior. And I keep on engineering the input till it gives me output that is relevant, right? So we have to be aware of these limitations when we try to, get something, useful out of it. So the evaluation is very important for these models. The other issue that we have faced and we have addressed are fallback mechanisms. Like, what do you do when you have error, correct? Should I take this? Should I do this or that, right? So you need to design fallback mechanisms as part of your deployment logic to make sure that there is credibility in the answers that you're providing to your customers, correct? So these are the input, solution, and output issues, challenges that we have seen. So as you can see that in the traditional sense, it was basically for every application you had labeled data and you got individual applications to be built, right? There were individual models. Now what has happened is you have a foundation model that is built on unlabeled data, right? And then you are basically doing an instruction fine-tuning of that foundation model to get your different applications. So you don't no more need that input data that you used to need for individual applications, correct? So as I told you, the problem was in the input data, right? And now it has shifted to the output, right? The problem is, what is it generating? It's still the data which is the problem. Previously it was the input data, now it's the output data which is the problem. So what are these generative AI? I think some of you didn't raise your hands, so I'll just give you a very quick intro to what Gen AI cannot do, okay? It's very important, the important thing about knowledge is what can I do with this and what I should not do with this, right? Both are important, right? So what can you do with it? The Gen AI solutions are basically autoregressive, they are sequential generators, so basically they generate text. The most important thing about these LLMs is that they are very good at representation learning, which means that if I have a picture of a cat and I have word cat, right? It will convert the picture to a vector representation and the cat word to a vector representation, which are very similar, right? So these models do vector representation very well. Now think of applications that can benefit from this, right? That is your area for application of LLMs, correct? So we have seen that it has been used very much in similarity matching, like chatbots, RAG. This is all similarity, right? I find similar things from documents, correct? Or sampling. This image generation, what is actually going on behind the hoods is sampling, right? It's picking pixels that are matching the textual caption that has been given. Let's say I want to generate an image from a text, right? So it's picking pixels, it's sampling, right? It's also based on similarity, correct? Then finally, joint embedding. Joint embedding means, as I told you, an embedding that is joint between text and image, or audio and text, video and text, and so on. So the similarity applications will hugely benefit from these LLMs, and it has. We have seen that, correct? So, but the problem on the other side is prediction. You cannot do prediction with these LLMs. In fact, I was in another forum, I think 2 days back, and somebody is trying to track the geospatial path of a satellite, okay? And they said that, can we use LLMs or generative AI to track the geospatial path? Problem is that they're using a physics-based model, right, which is a single variable, which is the velocity of the satellite and the position, right? And they said, can we use generative AI? So I asked back the question, have you looked at one-order Markov, second-order Markov models? That means models that are dependent on the previous velocity, or 2 velocities back. Why don't you try those things first? That's how you do, I would say, research, right? You do Occam's razor, right? You find the simplest thing first. Does it work or not? Instead of going to generative AI, right? So it's very important to understand what generative AI cannot do, right? And be able to mix both, okay? So there is opportunity for machine learning as well. Then of course, these models realistically hallucinate. I mean, if you've seen the output of some of these LLMs, they are so realistic, right? But actually they're hallucinating. Nothing like that exists, okay? So be careful with hallucination. Some of the ways of removing hallucination is RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, where you're limiting your input that the LLM is generating to only your context, correct? And evaluating is absolutely important here, okay? So I just listed out, these slides will be given to you, I think shared with you. So I just listed a few strategies here. I believe that foundations are very important for scale. If your foundations are weak, you can build a 10-story building on it, it's going to fall, okay? So your foundation should be able to hold a 10-story building for you to build a 10-story building, right? So it's very important to have very strong foundations, okay? And the key to these strong foundations, first is leadership, right? That means there has to be a top-down alignment of leadership with the business, with the tech guys. I think we have a mix of tech and business people here, and there has to be very, very close collaboration and alignment to make this work, right? because this is an experimental process. Remember, this is an experimental process, right? So there has to be alignment. The next, I think, 5 points that I would say is working backwards from the business problem. This is our Amazon culture, right? The way we do innovation is we work backwards from the customer's problem. So we go to a customer, we sit down with them for hours together, just trying to understand what is their requirement and their problem. And in fact, it's not that we hear and we agree to everything, we vehemently disagree also, correct? Like somebody said that, you know, if customer wants to go fast from point A to point B, they're probably looking for faster horses, okay? But if you look at it for today, you know, we have invented cars and I don't know what, like faster and faster cars, right? So customer will say, okay, we need faster horses, because that's what the customer knows, right? We know about horses, correct? So we need faster horses, okay? So it's very important that you have to disagree, we have to understand exactly, you know, what the customer wants, okay? So that's very important. That's the discovery part. So I have a next slide on this. I'll skip that, but I'm just giving you an idea that that's what we do in the discovery sessions. We sit down with the customer, understand, having a very honest heart-to-heart conversation, what exactly is, how can we help you, right? So that's the discovery part. Then there's the scoping part, which is a technical scoping part, that where we are mapping the business problem to the technical problem. It's called formulation, right? For example, if the business problem was, I want to understand the sentiment of my customers in their reviews. Let's say that was the business problem, right? Then the technical problem would be, okay, can we do a sentiment classifier, right? I want to classify, given the reviews, is it positive, negative, neutral, what kind of, so that's the technical scoping. So for everything, you need to do a mapping, including your success metrics, right? So the business has, let's say, a success metric. This is a very interesting experience that I had, that we were working with this customer who runs these drones, right, on mining sites, okay? And they are detecting this is an object, this is a ground, this is vegetation, and so on, right? And to do that, what they are proposing is we'll do semantic segmentation. So we'll segment the pixels that are buildings, this is ground, this is vegetation, and so on. And why do they want to do that? Because they want to reduce the manual annotation time. So there are humans who are annotating these images, right? And they want to reduce their time, right? So they were using an algorithm for semantic segmentation, and it was giving them some loss error, right? So let's say 70% accuracy. Now the 70% accuracy means there's 30% inaccuracy, right? So there was no investigation into what is this 30%, right? And is that if I go from 70 to 90, will that really help the annotator? After all, the annotator is the stakeholder here, right? I'm trying to reduce his time, correct? So when we looked at this segmentation algorithm, of course we could improve the segmentation algorithm by saying that, okay, we are going to bring in the latest technology and whatever, right? And improve by, let's say, 10-20%. But we also saw that imagine if the error, that 20% error is white noise, right? That means your error is all over the image. Then the effort is about going and fixing every single pixel, correct? That has not reduced the annotator's time. So your objective function that you're using to do your segmentation has to have a component that says, I cannot allow white noise. The errors cannot be spread across the image. It can at most be concentrated in one part so that the annotator can fix only on that and fix it, correct? Because that is going to reduce the annotator's time, right? So this business metric, success metric to technical metric is a very tricky thing, correct? So if you do not understand why and what kind of help that I want to give to this business stakeholder, I cannot translate it to technical. And I think there was a question there that, sometimes the business metrics are vague, right? They are not really technical. Actually, it's not true. All business metrics are true. I mean, imagine P&L. What is it? It's just numbers, right? Revenue minus cost, right? Is my profit, right? Is it not quantitative? It's quantitative, right? So every business metric is quantitative if you look at it, right? And there must be a way to translate that business metric to a technical metric, okay? So that is where we come in to help, do these strategization and understand and help explain that this is how you can translate it, right? So we help that customer, and it's a public customer for us. It's called AusNet. They actually run the biggest telco network in Australia, Victoria, okay? And they're doing this for basically in a very noble cause for stopping bushfires, vegetation, right? And they have, because these utility lines run through these vegetation, right? And they can catch forest fires, and in Australia, forest fires is a big thing, right? How to reduce it. So that's a project that we're very proud of, right? So just to give you an example on how working backwards helps you, right, in identifying. So it's not blue sky research, right? It's very down to earth, day-to-day thing, but it's very, very critical for running business, right? Finally, design and scale readiness data strategy, right? This is very, very important. We talk of data. So many players will come in and sell, oh, we have this database, we have this indexing technology, this service, that service, many things, right? That doesn't solve your ML readiness. So you have to work backwards from the application. That this is my application, these are the features of my application, and for running these features, I would need this kind of data, right? And then you decide, okay, for this kind of data, how do I store it? What is the accessibility of that data, right? If I have to create a data strategy, data collection strategy. So let's say when users are moving their screen, I made a UI, right? What kind of data I'm going to collect from the user, right? So all these things is working backwards if you look at it. It's not that you decide on your database first, right? And then you find, okay, I'm going to build an application on this database, right? That's not the right approach, okay? So in everything, if you look at it, it's always working backwards. So you work backwards from the customer's endpoint to decide what technologies, and we disagree. It's not that we're trying to sell AWS from that perspective. And the good thing about AWS is we have the widest, broadest, and the deepest options, right? So you will always find something that is useful for your use case, okay? So data strategy, ML-based data strategy is very important. Then of course, MVP approach, right? You want to do something, start small, right? You can think big, but start small. Experiment a lot, right? Try to break your own system as much as possible, right? Because if you don't break it, somebody else will. And remember, very, very interesting experience that we had was that one bad example can cause a lot of headache, right? If you have an AI system that gives one wrong output, that's it, right? So please break your system as much as possible before you put it in. And I'm going to show you the Rufus system that we have. I'm personally a beta tester for it, and we try to break it every day, okay? So it's a very, very interesting experiment, right? Particularly for generative AI, right? When you're doing these injections, you try to inject bad knowledge, right? Try to find out what the model is doing internally, all these things, right? So jailbreaking and all those things. So this is very, very important. Fallback mechanisms, and for engineering, I think cost performance trade-off is the most important thing if you're using foundation models, right? As I told you from the frugal GPT experiment that there is always a scope for other LLMs. Don't think because everybody on LinkedIn is talking about this as the king of all LLMs. I have seen people who have experienced a lot of flaky, I would say, latency issues with many of these big models, correct? So give it a shot. I think we can achieve a cost performance trade-off that fits your bill, okay? Again, it's working backwards. You have a budget, right? You have to work backwards from the budget, right? The final thing is fix your SLAs and monitoring and mechanism. So you must have, so these are foundations if you see, right? But if you have these foundations correct, you can scale on this. I mean, the first time when I joined Amazon 6 years ago, I met a research team that was working on automating metric tracking. I said, what do you guys do? It's only 3 people in the team, huh? I said, automating metric tracking. I've never seen this research anywhere. What do you do? So they mentioned that, see these AI models, right? In production, you can evaluate, how do you evaluate, right? You create a ground truth, and then you compare against the ground truth, right? I have this ground truth, and this is my result. Evaluate, is it good enough or not? So how will you scale this? How much ground truth will you keep on generating when you scale, right? So they are working on building ML models that will help you to automate it and give you these uncertainty analysis of how much confidence I can have about the output, okay? And then you can put you can put fallback mechanisms on it to see how to deal with it. So this is a very critical research, right? But this is not talked about a lot, right? We only talk about the next medicine that is going to come out that is only in a paper, right? So very interesting work that is going on in this space, and I think this is not necessarily about how you would do a strategy for scaling in terms of whether you should use a different kind of model, or should you how many deployments and all. It's not that, but it's foundations. But these foundations are key. So I'll keep skipping. Yes, 5. Okay. So I was talking about the uncertainty analysis here, right? This is very important. For every output, you should think of an estimating a score. Same for LLM evaluation. By the way, when you look at public benchmarks for LLM evaluation, the evaluations are only for the LLM, not for the application. There's a difference between LLM evaluation and LLM application evaluation. What you need is the application evaluation, not the LLM on public benchmark data sets, okay? So it's very important that you understand what it means. There is a huge difference. And the other thing is about individual averages, okay? Generally what we do as machine learning practitioners is our output scores are averages, right? On average, this is the thing, right? But when you do product delivery, you don't do average. One mistake can cause big problem, right? So it's very important to look at specific responses and how to address them, okay? So averages, I have an anecdote which I can share later. Okay, so this is what the tracking metrics that I was talking about. If you know red teaming, this is one way that we do. This is for Rufus as well, right? How do you do red teaming? That means this is like an oracle. Your model is an oracle, and you're trying to break it. And there are multiple ways to do red teaming, okay? So by prompt injection and so on. Okay, I have a video of Rufus. I don't have for the time. This is Rufus for you. Let me see. There's no audio, okay? So basically, you can select. In this case, they have selected Easter candy. So I'm looking for Easter candies, okay? So you get some recommendations of Easter candies. And then, and you have some questions. You can select from some of those questions, or you can write your own question. So what they do is that they'll select one of the questions from here. The most popular Easter candy. That gives you the most popular Easter candy, list of at least the most popular Easter candies. So this is, by the way, all in the back end is run by GenAI, okay? So, and these models were trained internally in Amazon, okay, on our own products, list of products. So they selected chocolate bunnies. This one. And then they are going to ask question around calories. So how much calories do these bunnies have, right? So it will go into the product information, find out all those details. So in this way you can do, so this is a different way of shopping experience, right? Where you're getting more deeper insights about the products. Sometimes these recommendations are event based. Let's say you have Hari Raya, and then you get recommendations of what is suitable to gift on a Hari Raya, right? Or Christmas, something like that, right? So, yeah. Any options for Easter candies? Other options? Okay. So I'll stop here for this one. Do we have time for questions? Sorry? Yes. I'll stop here and take questions.
Please give it up to Mr. Sujoy. Yeah. So thank you, Sujoy, for the presentation. That's very insightful. Just like before, we also have curated a list of questions from our participants. And I guess this is very related to Rufus. A lot of our playground participants are actively building POCs with our corporate partners. So, and I like the fact that you mentioned we need to keep it simple. Probably a lot of the case we don't need to reinvent everything from scratch. What can you tell to these early stage startups, sort of like the workflow or tools that you provide that they can leverage for them to build POC quickly, break things fast, and evaluate their solution fast as much as possible?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So for quick things fast, I mean, quick implementation is the tools that you would need from AWS are Bedrock, right? Which gives you the broadest and the deepest collection of LLMs and LLM integrations also. So for example, knowledge bases. So if you're looking for vector databases, so what are vector databases? You can do search. And these vector databases are backed by different kinds of underlying databases. So you have OpenSearch, where you can do indexing, where you have unstructured text, you do chunking and searching. That's one, OpenSearch. Then we have other databases like Postgres, right? When your data is in tabular form and you want to index a column from that table and basically generate an embedding for that and then search on that column only. So that's possible. So there are multiple options that you have for vector databases. Knowledge bases also have information extraction. So in an RAG application, what you usually do is that you have documents, and your documents can be, let's say, in tabular form, it can be PDFs, HTML, and so on. So there's an information extraction stage first, where your data from these documents are first converted into a narrative form. Very important, these are LLMs. So they need the data in a narrative form. So if you have tables, this is structured. It's not narrative, right? So they need the data in a narrative form. So information extraction, convert it to a narrative form, then index that, right? How do you index it? You chunk it, you generate the vectors, right? And store them in the vector database. A question comes in, you can search for it, and that retrieves you the chunks that are relevant for the query, right? Which you can add as part of the prompt as context, and ask the LLM to generate an answer out of that, correct? So this is the most common application that I have seen. Most of these are RAG. So Bedrock has a collection of all these things. Under Bedrock, you have the LLM options. These are both open source LLMs and proprietary LLMs, right? Then there's evaluation. I think evaluation is a very important thing. So if you're running evaluations, manual evaluations, that means you want to engage humans to evaluate your output, you can do that through Bedrock as well, right? So in LLM technology is called alignment. So basically you can do alignment experiments, right? So LLM has generated a text, you can engage a force of humans to basically give you comments on that, right? So I think Bedrock, I would say, is a self-contained service list. And I think one thing that I just sent to Rudy, there was an announcement today that we have cross-region inference available. Is a very interesting development, which means that I think many customers had been facing these flaky requests. I know that it's not available in Indonesia, right? So you have to go to other regions. I guess whitelisting is required for in Singapore. There's a gated, but you can use it in US East 1. But this cross-region thing, what it does is that you don't have to do region selection, capacity estimation on regions, right? The service will do, you have a primary region that you go to, and the service will help you to select which region to move your query to get you back answers. So that's a very interesting thing. So I think Bedrock is self-sufficient, yes.
Just very quick follow-up questions. So even for large data sets, particularly for real-time, high frequency, low latency type of applications, Bedrock should be able to cover all that.
Yes, it's about consistency, right? So if you require, like in trading applications, if you require high frequency, low latency consistently, then I wouldn't recommend that, right? Because in that case, there are multiple things. We have horizontal scaling, we have vertical scaling, we can do network optimizations using the ultra clusters, right? Which is at the data level, right? So there are multiple options that we would look at, including your data storage, like FSX for Lustre, how to get the data fast and all. So there are multiple optimizations that are required for high throughput, low latency kind of consistent ones, right? But if it's not consistent, then yes, many of these options that are out of the box available are okay. Yes.
Thank you again, Sujoy. I think we're out of time, so please give it up again for Sujoy. And I'll give the mic back to Rick.
Thank you very much, Reza and Sujoy. Thank you very, very much. As we come to the end of our formal sessions, we'd like to kindly ask you all to give feedback to us, which is through a QR code, which is going to be on the screen. Please, every one of you, fill out the survey form, which is very valuable for us for our next event. I would like to extend as well deepest gratitude to all the speakers, participants, and of course our sponsors, Tokopedia and AWS, and the support from Zandit for making today's events possible. So it's been a pleasure to have you all here. So I'd like to invite all of you to have photo sessions. I think you can stay on your seat. I think you can stand up. I mean, stay on your seat and stand up. I mean, stay wherever you are, but stand up. And there's a photographer. Yeah, kita bakal foto sama-sama ya. So, and just want to announce as well, we have also more workshops coming up, lining up to our demo day in December. So please stay tuned and don't forget to register. To follow our Instagram at AIIP.ai or visit our website at AIIP.ai.com. Once again, AIIP.ai for our Instagram account or the website AIIP.ai.com. So I think the photographer is ready, so let's take pose together. Yes, semuanya berdiri mungkin. Oh, it's a group photo, so ya mungkin ya deketan. Jadi don't stand on your wherever you are. Come closer. My bad. Kurang tinggi saya. Gen Z.
Come closer. Yeah.
Come closer, come closer. Yeah, come closer.
Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Hang on, guys.
One more. Make sure semuanya in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for everyone. So grab yourself Grainsly, a healthy snack, not healthy snack, healthy food. Please, you can order it online or you can visit the Instagram as well and Kopi Kenangan as well.